নির্বাচন সামনে রেখে প্রথম বিতর্কে এখন পর্যন্ত একে অপরকে টেক্কা দিয়ে যাচ্ছেন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের দুই প্রেসিডেন্ট প্রার্থী কামালা হ্যারিস ও ডোনাল্ড ট্রাম্প। ফিলাডেলফিয়ায় এই বিতর্ক চলবে 90 মিনিট। এবিসি নিউজের আয়োজনে মঞ্চে উঠে প্রথমেই হাত মেলান দুই নেতা। অর্থনীতি নিয়ে প্রথম প্রশ্নের জবাবে কর কমানো ইস্যুতে ট্রাম্পকে আক্রমণ করেন ডেমোক্র্যাট প্রার্থী কামালা। জবাবে বাইরের দেশের ওপর শুল্ক আরোপের প্রতিশ্রুতি দেন রিপাবলিকান নেতা ট্রাম্প। কামালাকে পাল্টা আক্রমণ করেন অভিবাসী ও সীমান্তে অনুপ্রবেশ ইস্যুতে। এরপরে এই বিগত মেয়াদে ট্রাম্পের ব্যর্থতা, বিগত শতকের মহামন্দার পর তার আমলে সর্বোচ্চ বেকারত্ব বৃদ্ধি নিয়ে সমালোচনা করেন কামালা। যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে চলমান অর্থনৈতিক সংকটের জন্য দায়ী করেন ট্রাম্পকে। বিতর্ক মোড় নেয় জীবনযাত্রার ব্যয়ের দিকে। চীনের কাছে কম্পিউটার চিপ বিক্রিতে অনুমোদন দিয়ে যুক্তরাষ্ট্রকেই বিক্রি করে দিয়েছেন ট্রাম্প, অভিযোগ কামালার। জবাবে করোনা মহামারীর কথা উল্লেখ করেন ট্রাম্প। এরই মধ্যে গর্ভপাত, এরপর অভিবাসন ইস্যুতেও কথা বলেন দুই নেতা। সীমান্ত সংকটের জন্য কংগ্রেসে অভিবাসন বিল পাশে ট্রাম্পের ব্যর্থতাকে দায়ী করেন কামালা। কেমন চলছে কামালা হ্যারিস ও ডোনাল্ড ট্রাম্পের কথার লড়াই? সরাসরি চলে যাচ্ছে সেখানে।
Something I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is
Happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that? A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people.
দেখছিলাম ট্রাম্প কামালা নির্বাচনী কথার লড়াই।